most welcome to 1178 here on the series. And I will continue with a trail that started earlier on with the rise of Robert Magiola, or induced by Robert Magiola. And it was most definitely mostly about his view on contradictions. And he was often taking up Zen Buddhism as one of those strains that did actually from the beginning emphasized on the validity of contradictions and seeing them as a predisposition for any meaning at all. And I will use an article here written by Mark Stewart that takes up the similarities between Zen Buddhism, deconstruction, and Nagarjuna. All of these are mentioned in Derrida and the Man by Robert Magiola, but it's a bit more generally written, more universal, not as detailed, and therefore, of course, not as difficult. Robert Magliola's book is definitely one of the more difficult ones. It is in my top 10s of difficult books. Taint of the Mirror is definitely there. It is, to some extent, he brings thinking from Heidegger, Derrida, even one step further. But let me start with the text here. Zen Buddhism often appears to be anti-intellectual, illogical, and trivial. These have puzzled many students of Buddhism. How can Zen be so irrational? By what Buddhist doctrines, tenets, or philosophies did Zen masters develop their unconventional and dramatic teaching and practices? The aim of this paper is to show that the main Sanlun Majamika doctrines, such as emptiness, the middle way, the twofold truth, and the refutation of erroneous views as elimination of the right views, have been assimilated into Zen teaching and practices. Majamika philosophy seems to provide a major theoretical foundation for Zen as a practical, anti-intellectual, irrational, unconventional, and dramatic religious movement. Majamika Buddhism was founded by Nagarjuna in the 2nd century AD and introduced to China by Kumarajiva some 150 years later. These Buddhist schools was known as the Sanlun Tzu, the free treatise school in China, Korea, and Japan. For it is based upon 3 main texts, namely 1, the Middle Treatise, 2, the 12-Gate Treatise, and 3, the 100 Treatise. Most scholars who are familiar with Zen Buddhism know that Zen was influenced by Taoism and the Yogacara Buddhism. But few people realized that Sanlun Buddhists had made great contributions to the formation and development of Zen Buddhism. Those who talk about the influence of Majamika Buddhism upon Zen have not given the sufficient and adequate attention it merits. They often assume that the Majamika Shunyata has a definite meaning by itself and stands for absolute reality. And the dialectical negation is for the affirmation of this reality. And hold that Zen is the application of those teachings. Majamika Buddhism is said to lead Zen Buddhism to be illogical Zen. But actually, the word empty or emptiness has no meaning by itself, but acquires various meanings in the process of salvation. And the Majamika negation is not intended to affirm any ontological reality. Zen is in fact not so irrational as is ordinarily supposed. The Majamika thought can help us clear away certain absurdities, contradictions, or inconsistencies in Zen teaching. In what follows, there will be a first brief presentation of Majamika. This will provide the reader with an overview of Majamika philosophy and help people to have a better understanding of thought. Then it will be shown that essential Majamika doctrines have been assimilated into Zen Buddhism. This will investigate how the former may have inspired the latter to emphasize the practical rather than the purely theoretical aspect of Buddhist religion, and why Zen Buddhists have employed senseless, trivial, or ridiculous statements to display their understanding of Dharma or to awaken people to Zen. According to Chinese Sun Lun masters, the main teaching of Majamika Buddhism focus on A. Emptiness, Hum, B. The middle way, Chung Tao, C. The twofold truth, RT Quan, and D. The refutation of erroneous views as the illumination of the right views. These doctrines are interrelated and aim at showing that all things are empty. Emptiness for the Majamika is not a descriptive name. It does not stand for any definite object or reality. It has no meaning by itself. It obtains the meaning only in the context of salvation. The Majamika doctrine of emptiness is not a metaphysical theory, but a soteriological device for purifying the mind so that one need be empty of emotional and intellectual attachments to objects of desire and knowledge. The doctrine is believed to be the central message of Buddhism and was first expressed as the doctrine of the middle way by the Buddha in the first sermon. The Buddha was said to have advised the 5 mendicants not to live a pessimistic ascetic life, nor to live a hedonistic worldly life, but to go above the 2 extremes. Only then could they attain true peace. Nagarjuna accepted the Buddha's teaching of the middle way and extended it to deal not only with the problem of the way of life, but also with all philosophical and religious issues. He found that philosophers and religious men often have a dualistic way of thinking. They tend to describe an event as appearing or disappearing, permanent or impermanent, similar or dissimilar, moving hither or thither. For Nagarjuna, all possible metaphysical and religious attempts to describe and explain reality were extreme views. He asserted that the middle way doctrine of the Buddha advised the avoidance of all extremes in order that the person might become free from the concept is and is not. The middle way rises above affirmation and negation. It is the path for removing the dualistic way of thinking. Nagarjuna opened the middle treatise with this word: I salute the foremost of the old teachers, the doctrine of the dependent co-arising, the cessation of all conceptual games. The true nature of an event is marked by no origination, no extinction, no permanence, no impermanence, no identity, and no difference, no arrival and no departure. This middle way of eightfold negation is not just 8 negations, but a wholesale negation of all attempts to characterize things. The negation is undertaken by means of a dialectic in the form of reductio ad absurdum. The dialectic is a kind of conceptual analysis. It purports to show that all concepts or categories through which we construct experience are unintelligible. Nagarjuna examined each traditional non-Buddhist and Buddhist theory which attempted to describe the true nature of reality and display that every theory led to certain contradictions or absurdities. He used the same principle of reasoning used by his opponents and aimed to lead them to see that their theories involves contradictions. If the concept or a conceptual system led to contradiction, it could not depict reality. For freedom from contradiction is accepted by the adequate himself as a necessary condition in order for a theory to be true. Moreover, the unintelligible is the unreal, and the incapacity to explain is sufficient reason to deny the reality of a thing. Through the dialectic method and conceptual analysis, Nagarjuna refuted all possible conceptual attempts to depict reality and advocated the doctrine of sunyata. This doctrine claimed that the true nature of things cannot be ascertained by intellect and described as real or unreal, mental or non-mental. That which is real must have a nature of its own, svabha, and should not be produced by causes or dependent on anything else. To say that a certain being or becoming is real would contradict the fact that all phenomena are bound by the relation of cause and effect, subject and object, actor and action, whole and part, unity and diversity, duration and destruction, and relations of time and space. Anything known for experience is dependent on certain condition, so it cannot be real. On the other hand, whatever one perceives cannot be conceived as unreal either, since that which is unreal can never come into existence. Thus, the Majamika doctrine of emptiness, which is the refutation of all attempts to describe things as real or unreal, is the same as the middle way. Emptiness as the middle way is the provisionary name, charming for the indeterminable, indescribable, and incomprehensible real state and nature of things. The real state of Dharma is like nirvana, indescribable, incomprehensible. Without birth or death, it is beyond the reach of thought and language. Things appear to exist, yet one attempts to rationally understand the real state of their existence. The intellect is baffled. Things should therefore be declared to be inexplicable. Sunyata here means that rejection of the intellect or the intellectual explanation of reality. Shunyata also means the wholesale negation of ascribing any assignable essence, characteristics, and function to anything. Things appear to have a certain essence, characteristic, and function. But after careful examination, they cannot conceivably have any of them, and hence are empty. A thing which is devoid of essence, characteristic, and function is not a real entity. So Nagarjuna said, material form, voice, taste, touch, smell, and the various factors of existence are all merely like an imaginary city in the sky, a mirage and a dream. According to the Majamika, one should understand the doctrine of sunyata by means of the twofold truth, namely the conventional truth and the ultimate truth. Nagarjuna's idea of the twofold truth reflects a difference in the manner in which one may perceive things and the point of view from which he looks at them. The worldly or conventional truth involves certain emotional and intellectual attachments to what one perceives, and hence the objects of knowledge are considered to have fixed, determinate, and self-existing natures. However, one may see what he perceives from a different point of view, namely the standpoint of the transcendental or ultimate truth, whereby he re-evaluates things of this phenomenal world without attachments. And one can know that things perceived are empty of any fixed, determinate, or self-existing nature. The twofold truth is essentially a pedagogic device. According to Chi-Tsang, the main reason why this device is established are these. One is it is set up for the purpose of defending Buddhism against possible charge of nihilism and absolutism. Two, it is given in order to help sentient beings to know Buddha's Dharma. 3. It is to explain away certain obscurities and inconsistencies in the teaching of the Buddha. People may easily interpret empty or emptiness as nothingness or non-existence and consider the Buddhist doctrine of emptiness as a form of nihilism, proclaiming that the whole universe is nothing or that nothing exists. For Nagarjuna, those who see shunyata as nothingness or non-existence fail to know the profound significance of the distinction between worldly and transcendental truths. They assume that there is only one universal standpoint from which one should examine all things. But actually the Buddha's teaching are presented by means of the twofold truth. Worldly truth has to do with the conditions of this phenomenal world, which are causally interdependent upon one another. Nagarjuna acknowledged that, from the standpoint of worldly truth, objects of the conventional truth appear as if they had an existence independent of the perceiver. This truth classifies objects as chair, table, eye, mind, or other sensible things, and in this manner is used to carry on everyday affairs. What Nagarjuna wants to deny is that empirical phenomena are absolutely real. From the transcendental standpoint, all things are devoid or fixed, determinate and self-existing essence, substance or reality. But to say that nothing is absolutely real does not mean that nothing exists. It does not nullify anything in the world. It is not the denial of the universe, but merely the avoidance of making any essential differentiation and metaphysical speculation about it. Nagarjuna's twofold truth has sometimes been considered to represent two fixed sets of truth. His distinction between the two truths are taken to imply correspond to an ontological distinction between relative reality and absolute reality. Emptiness viewed from the standpoint of the ultimate truth must stand for a certain absolute essence or reality. And Majamika thought should be called absolutism, but actually Majamika philosophy is not about absolutism either. For Nagarjuna, all concepts include the term shunyata are incomplete symbols or provisionary names. They do not stand for definite entities, and by themselves they have no meaning. Emptiness, as used by Nagarjuna, is not something in itself. Very important. To emphasize that emptiness is not primarily an ontological concept does not refer to any absolute reality. He warned that in order to refute all erroneous views, the victorious one teaches emptiness. He who holds that there is an emptiness will be called incurable by all Buddhas. Nagarjuna's teaching of the twofold truth is simply an expedient device to explain away ignorances and delusions. The so-called conventional truth and ultimate truth are only two different ways of looking at the same things, and can be found in anything. For example, when one sees a chair from the ordinary standpoint, he may be applying a worldly truth that there is before him a chair, not a table. So should the same chair be seen from the highest standpoint, one will realize that it is as empty as a table. These two truths are not exhaustive of all truths, nor are they two fixed sets of truth. If the higher truth is considered to stand for certain determinate or absolute essence, it would become a lower or ordinary truth. One has to re-examine it from another high standpoint so that he can understand the emptiness of all things. So a truth can be higher or lower, or whether it's high or low depends upon one's mental conditions. This doctrine of the twofold truth is well expounded by Chi Tsang in his twofold truth of the three levels. On the first level, ordinary people believe that what appears to us through the senses is the true nature of things. They affirm the reality of all things and hold that dharmas, all things, are real and possesses being. But saints or the enlightened do not accept this naive realism and know that dharmas are empty in nature. The former is regarded as worldly truth and the latter as ultimate truth. The second level explains that both being and non-being belongs to the worldly truth, whereas non-duality, neither being nor non-being, belongs to the ultimate truth. Both worldly and ultimate truth are the first level, when viewed from a high standpoint, can be ascribed only to the sphere of worldly truths. On the second level, for the affirmations of either being or non-being are two extremes. The middle way is to refute these extremes, and hence non-duality is the ultimate truth. On the third level, both duality and non-duality are worldly truth, whereas neither duality nor non-duality is ultimate truth. The true truths of the previous levels are two extremes from the standpoint of this level. The avoidance of them is regarded as the middle way or ultimate truth. This dialectical process is often called the middle way or the twofold truth. Like the middle way, the twofold truth is essentially a way of emptiness, as it is a path of eliminating extreme views so that one may be empty of attachments. Different levels here represent the degree of one's spiritual maturity and accomplishment. The advance from one level to another is the process of salvation and transcending the world. The doctrines of the middle way of eightfold negation, a distinction between the conventional truth and the ultimate truth, and emptiness should be examined and comprehended from different levels. The middle way is not just a refutation of a pair of extreme views, but a negation of all extreme. The middle way is not just a refutation of a pair of extreme views, but a negation of all extreme views wherever they occur. The conventional truth and the ultimate truth do not stand for two definite truths or realities. They have different connotations and implications on each level. The dialectical process is not limited to three levels. It is a means of purifying the mind, which can be employed progressively to infinite levels until one is free from all conceptual attachments. When all attached things and views are completely eliminated, emptiness means absolutely non-abiding. It should be noted that to obtain the ultimate liberation from ignorance and delusion, one does not have to go through three levels or the infinite stages of the gradual progression, for one can achieve enlightenment instantly. Emptiness is like medicine. Some people may have to take the medicine many times before their diseases are cured, but others may take it just once and be instantly healed. Also, no matter how one obtains salvation, he should know that, as with medicine, emptiness is of use to him only so long as he is ill, but not when he is well again. Once he gets enlightenment, emptiness should be discarded. Everything becomes full as they are. Like emptiness, the twofold truth is a good soteriological device for the Bodhisattva to save or to help himself and others to obtain enlightenment. The Bodhisattva is a person who has wisdom, prajna, and knows that conventional truths depends upon words and names, and that from the ultimate stance, all conceptualizations should be eliminated and all the silence reigns. However, he is also a person who has great compassion, karuna, to help ignorant beings, who knows only discursive knowledge. To attain nirvana, the preaching and exposition of Buddhism must depend on words and concepts. So the Bodhisattva cannot be silent, but how can he both be silent and have unattached prajna, and be open and show great karuna at the same time? For Nagarjuna, this can be done by means of the twofold truth. Since nothing experienced in the phenomenal world has a fixed, determinate, and self-existing nature, no description of any phenomena can be said to be unconditionally true. Yet conventional truth is not entirely useless, for without conventional truth, ultimate truth cannot be obtained. Without obtaining ultimate truth, nirvana cannot be obtained. Transcendental truth is explained by speech, and speech is conventional and conditional. The Bodhisattva knows and practices this teaching of the twofold truth. He uses words and concepts, but he realizes that neither stand for nor point to anything substantial. He employs reason and empirical facts to refute extreme views and recognize that they are all empty. It is this skill in means which enables him to live in conditional and transcendental worlds simultaneously, and hence to save and benefit himself and others equally. There seem to be certain ambiguities and even contradictions in the verbal expressions of Buddhist Dharma. For example, the Buddhist text sometimes states that all things are causally produced and impermanent. But at other times it states that causal production and impermanence cannot be established. The scripture said that enlightenment, vidya, is contrasted with ignorance, avidya. Yet all dualistic thinking should be rejected. How can all these inconsistent teachings be true? Why are there such contradictory statements? Which one is really true? The Majamika doctrine of the twofold truth serves as an exegetical technique. It is used to explain away the contradictions in Buddhism and make the Buddha's teaching all true. The Buddha was a practical teacher. His teaching was given according to the intellectual and spiritual conditions of the audiences. Different messages were delivered from different standpoints. Each of them has no meaning by itself, but has to be known from a certain appropriate standpoint. No truth is true by itself, but is recognized as true in a certain context. So-called conventional and ultimate truths designate the two main contexts or standpoints. All Buddhas presented their teaching by means of these truths. From the conventional stance, they may claim that all things are causally produced and impermanent, and that enlightenment is contrasted with ignorance. As far as conventional truth is concerned, these teachings are true. Yet Buddhas may examine things from a transcendental stance and say that causal production and impermanence cannot be established, and that all dualistic thinking should be rejected. When one tries to understand Buddhist teaching, he should examine them by means of the twofold truth. If he can do so, he will find that there are no contradictions in them, and that all Buddha's Dharma is true. However, ultimately, no truth for Majamika is absolutely true. All truths are essentially pragmatic in character and eventually have to be abandoned. Whether they are true is based on whether they can make one clinging or non-clinging. Their truth values are their effectiveness as means, upaya, to salvation. The twofold truth is like medicine. It is used to eliminate all extreme views and metaphysical speculation. In order to refute any annihilationist, the Buddha may say that existence is real, and for the sake of rejecting the eternalist, he may claim that existence is unreal. As long as the Buddha's teachings are able to help people to remove attachments, they can be accepted as truths. After all extremes and attachments are banished from the mind. The so-called truths are no longer needed and hence are not truths anymore. One should be empty of all truths and lean on nothing. To understand the empty nature of all truths, one should realize, according to Chizan, that the refutation of erroneous views is the illumination of right view. The so-called refutation of erroneous views in a philosophical context is a declaration that all metaphysical views are erroneous and ought to be rejected. To assert that all theories are erroneous views. Neither entails nor implies that one has to have any view. For the Majjhimikas, the refutation of erroneous views and the illumination of right views are not two separate things or acts, but the very same. A right view is not a view in itself. Rather, it is the absence of views, or all views. If a right view is held in a place of an erroneous one, the right view itself would become one-sided and would require refutation. The point that the Majjhimikas want to accentuate, expressed in contemporary terms, is that one should refute all metaphysical views, and to do so does not require the presentation of another metaphysical view, but simply forgetting or ignoring all metaphysics. Like emptiness, the words such as right and wrong or erroneous are really empty terms, without reference to any definite entities or things. The so-called right view is actually as empty as the wrong view. It is cited as right only when there is neither affirmation nor negation. If possible, one should not use the term but. We are forced to use the word right in order to put an end to the wrong. Once wrong has been ended, then neither does right remain. Therefore, the mind is attached to nothing. To obtain ultimate enlightenment, one has to go beyond right and wrong, or true and false, and see the empty nature of all things. To realize this is prajna, true wisdom. The main Majamika texts, such as the Middle Treatise, the 12-gate treatise and the 100 treatise, had been translated into Chinese and were well known among Chinese Buddhists more than 100 years before the Bodhidharma. The first patriarch of Chinese Zen Buddhism went to China in 520. Huineng is regarded as the real founder of Zen Buddhism, although he was the sixth patriarch. He lived more than 100 years after Qi-Tsang, who developed and systemized Chinese Sanlun Majamika philosophy. A study of Majamika teachings has been an academic discipline of Buddhist monks in China and Japan since the 6th century AD. Nagarjuna was in fact regarded as the venerable patriarch by the Zen Buddhists. Both Bodhidharma and Huineng, and also their followers, must have known and accepted Majamika teachings. In fact, Zongzhen masters such as Nito Fayong and Nan Chuan Puyan were Sanlun Buddhists before they became Zen teachers. Zen literature shows that the main Majamika tenets, such as emptiness, the middle way, and the twofold truth, and the refutation of erroneous views, as the illumination of right views, have been absorbed into Zen Buddhism. In many respects, Zen appears to be a practical application of Majamika thought. Many Zen writings and stories indicate that Zen Buddhism accepted the doctrine of shunyata. This can be seen in the following alleged conversation between Bodhidharma and the Emperor Wu Ti. The Emperor, since my enthronement, I have built many monasteries, copied many holy writings, and invested in many priests and nuns. How great is the merit due to me? Bodhidharma, no merit at all. The Emperor, what is the noble truth in its highest sense? It is empty, answers Bodhidharma, no nobility whatsoever. The Emperor, who is it then that is facing me? I don't know, sir. The ultimate and holiest principle of Buddhism, according to Bodhidharma, is the doctrine of emptiness. It means that all things, including merits, nobility, and knower and knowing, are empty. It is said that Hu Jian, the fifth patriarch, resided in the Yellow Plum in Qingzhou, made an announcement that anyone who could prove his true understanding of Buddhism would be given the patriarchal robe and proclaimed as his successor. Huineng is alleged to inherit the robe by making the following poem. There is no body tree, nor stand of a mirror bright, since all is void. Where can the dust light? The poem suggests that the teaching of emptiness is the essence of Zen Buddhism. It states not only that evils, passions, and physical objects are empty, but also that enlightenment and religious training to get rid of the illusions are empty. Although Zen was influenced by Yogacara idealism and claimed that the mind is the Buddha, the so-called mind, for certain Zen Buddhists, is really empty. The Zen teaching of emptiness of mind is well illustrated in the following conversation between Tao Kuan, a Yogacara Buddhist, and a Zen master. Tao Kuan, with what frame of mind should one discipline oneself in the truth? Zen master, there is no truth to be framed, nor is there any truth in which to be disciplined. Tao Kuan, if there is no mind to be trained and no truth in which to be disciplined, why do you have a daily gathering of monks? Tao Kuan, if there is no mind to be framed and no truth in which to be disciplined, why do you have daily gatherings of monks who are studying Zen and disciplining themselves in the truth? Zen master, I have not an inch of space to spare. Where could I have a gathering of monks? I have no tongue. How could it be possible for me to be advised to others to come to me? Tao Kuan, how can you tell me a lie like that to my face? When I have no tongue to advise others, it is possible for me to tell a lie? Tao Kuan, I cannot follow your reasoning. Zen master, neither do I understand myself. Like the Majamika, the Zen master refused to make an anti-comment to any mental or non-mental reality. As mentioned previously, there are several different meanings of the word empty or emptiness in Majamika Buddhism. One of the most important meanings is the total negation of conceptualization. For the Majamikas, any attempt to use concepts or conceptual systems to describe the true state of things involves contradictions or absurdity, and hence should be refuted. Zen seem to accept this teaching of emptiness and subsequently rejects any conceptual way of thinking. Like the Majamikas, Zen Buddhists claim that men are slaves to concepts and that enlightenment is to be liberated from conceptual thinking. The intellect appears to be useful tools to find truths, but actually is the worst enemy of religious experiences. Zhao Kung Kao, a Zen master, said that conceptualization is a deadly hindrance to the Zen yogis, most injurious than poisonous snakes or fierce beasts. Brilliant and intellectual persons always abide in the cave of conceptualization. They can never get away from it in all their activities. As months and years pass, they become more and deeply engulfed in it. Unknowingly, the mind and conceptualization gradually become at peace. Anyone who wants to obtain salvation should eliminate conceptualization. The total negation of conceptualization for the Majamikas means no thought, no abiding. Huineng and his followers seem to follow this model of teaching. Set up no thought as the main doctrine, no form as the substance, and no abiding as the basis. No thought is not to think even when one involves in a thought. Non-abiding is the original nature of man. To achieve no thought and no abiding is to realize that the true nature of things is unintelligible and incomprehensible. and not to use any verbal or written statements to depict reality. Like the Majamika, Zen Buddhists use the word empty or emptiness, not as descriptive name referring to any reality, but merely as a convenient device to purify one's mind so that one may be void of delusions and passions. Tao Chen asked the Master Fa Yen, does the void contain the six phenomena? The Master responded, void. Tao Chen was immediately awakened. After he made a bow to express his heartfelt gratitude, the Master asked him, how did you become enlightened? Tao Chen answered, void. The word empty or void here performs the function of stopping any further intellectual pursuit, thus awakening the devotee. The Zen acceptance of shunyata as the total negation of intellectual speculation and as a soteriological device for purifying one's mind seems to have led Zen Buddhists to develop a non-speculative approach to the attainment of enlightenment. It seems also to lead to them to emphasize the practical rather than the purely theoretical aspect of Buddhist religion. For men who discover that all intellectual and conceptual reasoning are really unintelligible and that theoretical speculation cannot give us true wisdom, they would tend to pursue a non-intellectual way of obtaining salvation and be practical or non-theoretical in dealing with religious problems. In fact, Chinese Sanlun masters often considered Nagarjuna as a man of jnana rather than a man of the intellect. So it's not surprising that Nagarjuna was later accepted as a patriarch by the Zen Buddhists. This seems to explain the Zen Buddhist preference for practical meditation to conceptual understanding of the Buddha's Dharma, and the teaching appeared to be non-rational and even anti-intellectual. When one studies the history of Buddhism, he will find that many or even most Buddhists defy the Buddha and mythologize his teachings. They think of him as supramundane and transcendent and give him a special ontological status. Buddha or the Tathagata denotes or refers to the absolute essence, which is both the ultimate reality and a loving person. But the Majamikas consider this as a misrepresentation of the teaching of the Buddha. Their doctrine of emptiness is the denial of making ontological commitment to anything, not even to the Buddha. They explained away all theological and philosophical speculations of Buddhism as erroneous or extreme views. This teaching of emptiness seems to have exercised an influence upon the development of the Zen view of the Buddha. Like the Majamika, certain Zen Buddhists neither defy the Buddha nor offer any special ontic status to the Buddha. For instance, when Gautama Buddha was born,